The year is 1958. A lecture hall in London is so packed that people are sitting in the aisles and standing 3 deep at the back. They are students, professors, artists, psychiatrists, Zen monks who flew in from Japan. They are there to hear one man speak. He walks onto the stage without notes. He is not a monk. He is not a saint. He has been divorced twice. He drinks. He laughs too loudly at his own jokes. He has been stripped of his ordination as an Episcopal priest for what the church called moral failures. And yet, when he opens his mouth, something happens in that room that people will spend the rest of their lives trying to describe. His name is Alan Watts, and he is about to say something that Carl Jung spent 40 years trying and failing to put into words. In our video on Carl Jung, the one where he spent 3 evenings reading the Tao Te Ching and sat in silence for the entire 4th morning, we left him at an edge. He had the map, the most comprehensive map of the human mind ever drawn. He knew the territory existed. He could describe its borders with extraordinary precision. What he could not do, what his entire system could not do, was show you how to live there. That is what Alan Watts came to do, and the story of how he did it is stranger, more human, and more useful than almost anything you've heard about either of them. I'm Andrew, and this is Daily Tao Wisdom, where we go back to the source, not the quotes on Instagram, not the self-help repackaging, the actual stories, the actual figures, the actual wisdom, and what it means for your life right now. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most sophisticated psychological map ever built in the West still left people lost, and how one deeply flawed, wildly alive British philosopher found the thing Jung's system couldn't give. Not a better map, but the ability to stop needing one. To understand what Alan Watts brought to the West, you have to understand the West he arrived in. The year is 1938. Europe is 6 months away from war. In London, a 23-year-old man named Alan Wilson Watts, born in Chislehurst, Kent, the son of a rubber company clerk, boards a ship to New York City with $40, a letter of introduction, and a single trunk of books that contains, among other things, every major Taoist and Buddhist text available in the English language. He has been reading them since he was 15. This is not normal. In 1930s England, Buddhism is considered an eccentric hobby at best and a spiritual deviance at worst. Taoism is almost completely unknown. The British Empire has been in contact with China for 200 years, and in that time, the sum total of its interest in Chinese philosophy can be roughly measured by the number of decent translations available in English bookshops, almost none. Watts had found the exceptions. Through a combination of extraordinary luck and obsessive self-education, he had encountered the work of D.T. Suzuki on Zen, Richard Wilhelm's translations of Taoist texts, the same translations, incidentally, that had so disturbed Carl Jung, and a small circle of London intellectuals who were quietly asking the question that the rest of the West was still afraid to ask. What if the East understood something about consciousness that Western psychology and Western religion had entirely missed? Watts was not drawn to Taoism the way a scholar is drawn to a subject. He was drawn to it the way a person is drawn to the answer to a question they've been unable to stop asking. The question, in his case, was this: why does the experience of being alive feel so persistently wrong? Not painful, necessarily, not tragic, just off, like you are slightly out of step with your own existence, like there is a gap between you and the present moment that you can never quite close, no matter how much you achieve, no matter how clearly you think, no matter how carefully you examine your own psychology. He had tried Christianity. He had been ordained as a priest. He had spent years in the discipline of theology. And Christianity, he found, had no good answer to this particular problem. It told you the gap existed because of sin. It told you the gap would be closed after death. It told you to pray. He was 23 years old, standing on a ship deck in the middle of the Atlantic, and he was carrying in that trunk of books what he believed was a better answer, an ancient answer, one that didn't promise resolution after death, but pointed at something available right now, the Tao Te Ching. And in his case, unlike Jung, he wasn't going to spend 40 years mapping its edges from the outside. He was going to try to live inside it. The consequences of that attempt would be, depending on who you ask, either the most important philosophical transmission of the 20th century, or one of the most spectacular personal disasters. The answer, it turns out, is both. Let's go back to Jung for a moment, because this story doesn't make sense without understanding exactly where his system stopped. In our video on Carl Jung and the Tao Te Ching, Carl Jung read the Tao Te Ching. It broke his theory of the mind. We traced what happened when the most rigorous psychologist of the 20th century spent 3 evenings with Lao Tzu's 81 poems and emerged, quietly shaken, with the admission that an anonymous Chinese philosopher had understood the deepest truth about the human mind 25 centuries before he did. Jung's system was extraordinary. The shadow, the collective unconscious, the process of individuation, the long, painful excavation of the self from the sediment of everything society had buried in you. These are not just interesting concepts. They are, as we explored in that video, genuinely useful maps. They have helped millions of people. They continue to help people. But here's the thing about a map. A map is, by definition, not the territory. Jung's map pointed toward a destination he called the self, capital S, the integrated, whole, fully realized human being who has done the work of facing their shadow, integrating their unconscious, becoming who they actually are. And the map was accurate. It described the destination with extraordinary precision. What it couldn't tell you was how to arrive, and once arrived, how to actually inhabit the place. This is the gap Watts walked into, not as a scholar, not as a therapist, as a man who had spent his entire adult life trying to answer the question of why the experience of being alive felt so persistently off, and who had found, in Taoism and Zen Buddhism, not a better map, but something the map could never be, a way of moving. When Watts arrived in America in 1938, he did not arrive as the Alan Watts the world would eventually know. He arrived as an earnest young Episcopalian priest with a fascination for Eastern religion, a combination that was, to put it mildly, not in high demand. He spent the next 12 years trying to build a bridge between Christianity and Zen. He wrote books. He gave lectures. He was appointed dean of a theological school in Illinois. He wore the collar. He performed the sacraments. And he was, by his own admission, deeply miserable. Not because the work wasn't meaningful, but because he was doing what Jung's patients in the early stages of analysis do, performing a self he had constructed rather than inhabiting the self that was already there. In 1950, his marriage collapsed. The church investigation followed. By 1951, the ordination was gone, Most people at this point would have retreated, would have rebuilt the structure, new career, new credentials, new institutional home. Would have done, in other words, exactly what the Jungian model predicts. Doubled down on individuation, worked harder at becoming. Watts did the opposite. He stopped trying to become anything. This was not a philosophical decision. It was a collapse. A genuine, personal, humiliating collapse. His marriage gone, his career gone, his institutional identity stripped away. He moved to a houseboat in Sausalito, California, with almost nothing. And in that emptiness, in that enforced, uncarved state, something that had been trying to speak for 20 years finally had room to be heard. He sat down and wrote The Wisdom of Insecurity. It was 1951. He was 36 years old. The book is unlike anything else in Western philosophy. It does not argue. It does not systematize. It does not offer a method. It simply points, with extraordinary precision and warmth, at the experience you are having right now, in this moment. The experience of being alive without a fixed, stable self at the center. This is the book Jung could not write, not because Jung lacked the intelligence, because he still had too much to protect, too much system, too much identity, too much map. Watts had just lost all of it. And from the emptiness, which the Taoists had always called the most useful thing, he wrote the clearest description of Wu Wei in the Western tradition, not as a concept, as a lived experience. You've felt this, haven't you? Not the philosophical version, the actual version. The moment after something you've spent years building falls apart. The strange, terrifying, briefly exhilarating feeling of having nothing left to protect. That is not failure. According to Lao Tzu, that is the beginning. In our video on Wu Wei, the true story of Wu Wei, we explored how the concept is always misread as passivity. It isn't. It is the action that becomes possible only when you stop forcing. Watts didn't theorize this. He lived it. On a houseboat with no job, no credentials, and no map. Here is a detail almost nobody knows about Alan Watts. Late in his life, 1966, he wrote a book called The Book, on the taboo against knowing who you are. The title is strange. The premise is stranger. Watts's central argument is this: Western civilization has made a catastrophic and foundational error. It has decided, so deeply and so early that we no longer even notice it, that the self is a separate thing, a subject surrounded by objects, an ego inside a body, inside a world that is fundamentally other, fundamentally hostile, fundamentally not you. He called this the skin-encapsulated ego. The belief, not the feeling, the belief, that you end at your skin, that what is outside you is not you. This belief, Watts argued, is not a fact of nature. It is a story so old and so universal in the West that we mistake it for reality. And it is, he said, the single source of almost all human suffering. Now, pause here, because Jung had said something almost identical. In the later stages of individuation, when a patient had done the work, really done it, Jung observed that the rigid boundary between self and world began to soften. He called it the transcendent function, the ego's grip loosening, the self beginning to emerge. He described it with precision. He mapped its stages. He could tell you what it looked like from the outside, in a patient who was moving toward it. But he described it from the outside. The map was always the map. Watts described it from the inside. And the difference is not academic. It is the difference between reading a description of water and being wet. The book opens with a question Watts says every child eventually asks, and every parent eventually fails to answer. What am I? What is this experience of being me, here, now, looking out through these eyes? Western culture's answer, he says, is, you are a separate self. You arrived here through no choice of your own. You will be here briefly. While you are here, your job is to survive, to achieve, to accumulate, and above all, to maintain the boundary between you and everything that is not you. The Taoist answer, the answer Lao Tzu gave in the first paragraph of the first text of the tradition, is different. Not philosophically different, experientially different. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. Watts spent 30 years translating what that means into language the Western mind could actually receive. And the translation he arrived at was this: you are not a separate thing experiencing a world. You are the world experiencing itself. The Tao is not somewhere else. It is what is happening right now, what is always happening, when you are not busy defending the boundary between you and it. We'll come back to this, because what Watts did with this idea in practice, the specific way he described the method that Jung's map couldn't provide, completely reframes everything I've just told you. Stay with me. Let's be precise about the difference, because it is easy to say Jung had the map, Watts had the method, and leave it vague. It isn't vague, it is specific. Jung's system operates on a spatial metaphor. The psyche has layers. The conscious mind is on the surface. The personal unconscious is below it. Your repressed memories, your unexpressed emotions, the shadow you haven't faced. Below that, the collective unconscious, the vast shared reservoir of archetypes that all human beings inherit. The direction of healing, in this model, is downward and inward. You excavate, you go deeper, you face what you find, you integrate it. Over time, the layers become less separate, the shadow less threatening, the ego less rigid. This is genuinely useful. In our Carl Jung video, we traced how his work with patients saved lives, real people who had been drowning in their own unconscious and found in Jung's system the vocabulary to begin the ascent. But Watts identified something that the spatial metaphor was doing to the people who used it. It was making them think of themselves as a project. You are a project to be completed. You have layers to excavate, shadow material to integrate, stages of individuation to pass through. At the end of the project, if you are diligent enough, you will arrive somewhere: the self, integration, wholeness. Watts read this and felt the Taoist alarm go off, because this is exactly the structure Lao Tzu spends the entire Tao Te Ching dismantling. Chapter 48. Jung quoted it in his later notebooks, as we noted in that video. In pursuit of learning, every day something is acquired. In pursuit of Tao, every day something is dropped. The project metaphor assumes that healing is additive, that you get better by gaining insight, gaining integration, gaining self-knowledge. More understanding equals more wholeness. Lao Tzu says the exact opposite. Wholeness is what you have when you stop adding. It is not achieved. It is uncovered, not by going deeper, by letting go of the belief that you need to go anywhere. Now, Watts was not dismissing Jung. He was, if anything, completing him. He said, Jung showed you the walls. He mapped every wall in the prison with extraordinary precision. He gave you the vocabulary to name each one, understand its origin, trace it back to its root. What Jung couldn't do, what the mapping method structurally prevents you from doing, is stop thinking of yourself as someone inside a prison, The walls are real. The mapping is necessary. But at a certain point, the continued focus on the walls becomes its own kind of trap. You become so good at seeing the walls that you forget to notice the door. The door, in Watt's language, is always already open. The Tao is not behind the wall. The Tao is what the wall is made of, what the prison is built inside, what you are made of. You do not find it by excavating. You find it, if find is even the right word, by relaxing the excavator. This is the paradox at the heart of Alan Watts's contribution, and if you miss it, you miss everything. In a world desperate for methods, for techniques, for frameworks, for the 12-step program that will finally deliver the transformation you've been promised, Watts refused, consistently, systematically, and often with great amusement, to give people what they thought they were asking for. People would come to his lectures and say, "How do I do Wu Wei? What is the technique?" Watts would smile, that particular smile, if you've seen the recordings, and he would say something like this: "The Tao is not something you do. The moment you try to do it, you've already missed it. Wu Wei is not a practice you can take up. It is what is already happening when you stop trying to make something else happen." This sounds like a dodge. It isn't. To understand why it isn't, you have to go back to a text that connects Watts and Jung more directly than almost any other document in the history of Western engagement with the East. The Secret of the Golden Flower. In our Carl Jung video, we touched on this. Jung wrote the foreword to Richard Wilhelm's 1929 German translation of this ancient Taoist practice manual, a text about the inner alchemy of consciousness, the transformation of awareness through what the text calls the circulation of the light. Jung read it and said, with characteristic precision, that it described, more accurately than his own vocabulary could, what he was watching happen spontaneously in his most healed patients. Watts read the same text and saw something Jung had missed, not in the text itself, in the way Jung was reading it. Jung was reading The Secret of the Golden Flower as evidence. Evidence for his theory. Evidence that the deepest therapeutic goal was real, that other traditions had observed it, that his own framework was therefore validated. Watts read the same text as instruction, not confirmation of a theory, direct instruction in what to actually do, or more precisely, what to actually stop doing. The Secret of the Golden Flower's central teaching, the circulation of the light, is not a meditation technique in the modern wellness sense. It is a description of what awareness is when it stops fixating, when it neither grasps nor rejects, when it neither forces nor escapes. It is, Watts pointed out, what your awareness is already doing in every moment that you are genuinely, unself-consciously alive. The problem is not that you don't know how to circulate the light. The problem is that you keep interrupting it with analysis, with the next thought, with the question, "Am I doing this right?" with the Jungian project of becoming the person you were always meant to be. You can feel this right now, if you're willing to check. There is a part of you that is reading these words, and there is another part, the analyst, the self-monitoring commentator, the perpetual internal observer, watching you read them, judging whether you're understanding correctly, comparing them to other things you know, deciding whether to agree. That second part, the observer, the analyst, the commentator, is not the enemy. Jung was right that it needs to be examined, its shadows faced, its patterns understood. But Watts was pointing at what happens when you've done all that work, or even when you haven't, and you simply let the commentator fall quiet for a moment. Not forever, not as a spiritual achievement, for a moment. What's left is not emptiness in the frightening sense. It is presence in the fullest sense. The circulation of the light. The Tao moving through the only vessel it has ever moved through. Exactly this moment. Exactly this awareness. Exactly as it is. In 1975, a year after his death at 58, on his houseboat in Sausalito, peacefully in his sleep, Watts's final manuscript was published. He had been working on it for years. It was called Tao, the Watercourse Way. It is, in the opinion of many scholars who have spent their careers studying both Western psychology and Eastern philosophy, the clearest bridge between Jung's world and Lao Tzu's world ever written. And the central concept, the one Watts returns to again and again, was not Wu Wei, though Wu Wei is everywhere in it. It was the water metaphor. You know this metaphor. We explored its Taoist roots in our video, The True Story of Wu Wei, where we traced how water does not force, does not plan, does not achieve through effort. Water simply flows toward wherever is lower, following the path of least resistance, and it cuts through stone. But Watts did something with this metaphor that nobody before him had done. He applied it not just to action, not just to how you move through the world, but to consciousness itself. He said, "Your awareness, when it is functioning naturally, before the self-monitoring commentator interrupts it, moves exactly like water. It flows toward whatever is present. It takes the shape of whatever it encounters. It does not resist. It does not force. It does not try to remain in one place when the natural movement is elsewhere." This is not a metaphor for passivity. This is the description of what the most effective, most alive, most fully present human beings actually do in the moments when they are most themselves, most capable, most creative. In those moments, they are not trying to be any of those things. The trying comes before, the preparation, the study, the hard work of facing the shadow, if we're speaking in Jungian terms. That work is real and necessary. But the moment of actual excellence, the moment when the musician plays something that surprises even herself, the moment when the writer finds the sentence that was waiting to be found, that moment is not the product of effort. It is the product of having done the effort and then letting go of it. Watts called this the Watercourse Way, not the achievement of effortlessness, which is a contradiction in terms. The discovery, through whatever path brought you there, that effortlessness was always already available, that the Tao was always already the medium through which you were moving. You had just been fighting the current. Here is the thing about Alan Watts that his most devoted followers tend to skip. He could not do it, not consistently, not reliably, not in the way his lectures described. He drank too much. His marriages, 3 of them, failed, each in the same pattern. An initial flowering of genuine connection, followed by his increasing withdrawal into his own interior world. The people who loved him said, with remarkable consistency, that he was more present in a lecture hall filled with strangers than in a room with one person who loved him. He described the Watercourse Way with extraordinary clarity. He could not always follow it. He admitted this, not in his formal books, but in conversations, in letters, in the late-night sessions on his houseboat, where the wine was open and the performance had been set aside. "I am a fraud," he said once to a student who later published the conversation. "But I am a sincere fraud." This is, in the deepest sense, a Taoist statement. Because the Tao Te Ching does not promise that knowing the truth will make you live the truth. Chapter 70. My words are very easy to understand, but no one can practice them. This is a text written by a man who understood, intimately, the gap between the map and the territory, even in the cartographer's own life. But here is what Watts understood about his own contradictions that makes him different from a simple hypocrite. He did not try to close the gap by pretending it wasn't there. He did not construct a persona of spiritual achievement that required maintenance and performance. He presented himself not as the destination, but as a fellow traveler, a man who had seen the ocean and was doing his best to describe it, knowing that the description was not the ocean. There is a kind of integrity in this that the success story version of Eastern wisdom consistently fails to offer. Watts was always in the gap. He said so. He said the gap was the practice. And in his better moments, the ones the people who knew him best describe with genuine wonder, he lived this with more grace than any theory could account for. I know this is a long one. Stay with me, because what comes next is where everything we've covered today comes together into something you can actually use. Let's step back. Let's look at the whole picture. What we have when we put Jung and Watts next to each other, and this is something neither the psychology departments nor the philosophy departments tend to do, is something remarkable. We have, between them, the most complete account of conscious transformation that the West produced in the 20th century. Jung gave us the archaeology. He showed us what is buried. He gave us the tools to excavate it, the language of the shadow, the concept of the collective unconscious, the process of individuation. He showed us, with extraordinary precision, what the obstacles are and where they come from. Watts gave us the movement. He showed us what is possible when the obstacles are cleared, or when you stop needing them to be cleared before you can live. He gave us, not a technique, but a way of holding technique. Lightly, without grasping, the way water holds nothing, and therefore holds everything. And the text that runs beneath both of them, the text Jung read on 3 evenings in 1929 that quietly dismantled his life's assumptions, the text Watts carried across the Atlantic as a 23-year-old on a ship deck, is the same text, the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu wrote something in the 5th century before the Common Era that contained both of them, the map and the method, the archaeology and the movement, the shadow and the water. He wrote it in 81 poems. Jung needed 40 years and several thousand pages to reach the edge of it. Watts needed 30 years and a collapse and a houseboat and 3 marriages and a sincere fraud's honesty about the gap between knowing and living. And Lao Tzu just wrote it down in 100 pages and disappeared, which is, if you know the Tao Te Ching, exactly what you would expect. Chapter 17. The best leader is one whose existence is barely known. When his work is done and his aim fulfilled, the people say, "We did this ourselves." The same could be said of the Tao. When it is working, when you are in it, when the water is flowing, when the light is circulating, you don't notice it. You notice only that something is moving beautifully and that you are less in the way of it than usual. That is the whole teaching. That is what Jung reached the edge of. That is what Watts fell into and climbed out of and fell into again for 58 years. That is what is available to you right now. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, this is extraordinary. two of the most interesting minds of the 20th century converging on the same ancient truth from opposite directions. Beautiful, and you have a presentation to finish, a conversation you've been avoiding, a version of yourself you've been trying to build that keeps feeling slightly further away than it did last year. So, let's be concrete. The trap that both Jung and Watts are pointing at is the same trap, just from different angles. Jung called it the inflation of the ego. Watts called it the skin-encapsulated self. Lao Tzu called it the 10,000 things, the ceaseless multiplication of distinctions, categories, desires, fears that obscures the undivided ground beneath them. In your life, right now, it probably looks like this. You have a persistent sense that you are not quite yet the person you are supposed to be. You are working towards something, the better relationship, the more meaningful career, the version of yourself that has done the therapy, integrated the shadow, found the practice that sticks. The Jungian trap is believing that more self-knowledge is the answer. That if you understand the pattern precisely enough, the pattern will release you. The Watts trap, the counter move that becomes its own trap, is believing that if you just relax enough, surrender enough, stop efforting enough, the Tao will take over and everything will resolve. Both traps have the same structure. Both assume that something needs to happen before you can be fully here. Jung said, "You need to become whole first." Watts said, "You need to relax your grip first." Lao Tzu said, "You are already here." Application 1. The observer and the observed. The next time you notice yourself doing the thing, the self-monitoring, the commentary, the gap between you and your own experience, don't try to stop it. Don't try to eliminate the observer. Jung would be appalled if you tried to eliminate the observer. The observer is necessary. The shadow needs to be seen. Instead, notice the observer itself. Turn the awareness toward the awareness. Not analytically. Not, what does this observation reveal about my unresolved patterns? Just, who is watching? This is the practice Watts borrowed from Zen and Lao Tzu both. When you turn the awareness toward awareness itself, the commentary briefly stops. Not because you've suppressed it, but because the commentary is what happens when awareness is pointed elsewhere. Try it for 10 seconds right now, not as a meditation, as a simple question. Who is reading these words? Application 2. Do the work, then let it work. Jung is not wrong. The excavation is real. The shadow work matters. The difficult conversation with yourself about the pattern you've been running for 30 years. That conversation is not optional. Do it. All of it. And then, this is the part Watts adds. When you've done it, don't keep doing it. Don't excavate the excavation. Don't analyze the analysis. The water cuts through stone, but only when it's actually flowing, not when it's studying the stone. In practical terms, do your reflection, your journaling, your honest self-examination. Give it real time and real attention. Then close the notebook. Go outside. Let the work work without you watching it. The integration happens in the living, not in the analyzing of the living. Application 3. The sincere fraud practice. You are going to try to live what you know to be true, and you are going to fail, not sometimes, regularly. You will know that the water finds its own level, and you will force things. You will know that the shadow needs to be faced, and you will avoid it. This is not hypocrisy. This is what Watts called being a sincere fraud. The practice is not to close the gap between knowing and living. The practice is to stay honest about the gap, to neither pretend it isn't there, nor use its existence as evidence that you are fundamentally broken. The gap is the Tao doing what the Tao does, moving through a human life that is still learning, still falling, still finding its way back to the water. Stay in the gap honestly. That is the practice. That is, Lao Tzu would say, enough. If what we've been building on this channel, the forgotten figures, the untold stories, the actual history of these ideas, is the kind of depth you've been looking for, subscribe. We go here every week, and drop a comment with this. Which trap do you fall into more? The Jungian trap of endlessly excavating yourself, or the Watts trap of trying to relax your way to freedom? I'm genuinely curious, because the answer reveals something about the specific way each person avoids the present. Let's go back to London, 1958, the rain-slicked street, the lecture hall so full that people are sitting in the aisles. Watts walks out onto the stage without notes. He speaks for 90 minutes without stopping. The audience is completely still, not in the performative stillness of people trying to be spiritual, in the actual stillness of people who have, for a moment, forgotten to monitor themselves. After the lecture, a young psychiatrist, a Jungian analyst, as it happens, pushes through the crowd to reach him. She has been practicing for 6 years. She has done the work, the shadow integration, the individuation, the long, difficult, genuinely useful excavation that Jung described. She says to Watts, "I understand everything you said. I understand it precisely, and I don't know how to do it." Watts looks at her for a moment. Then he says, "And this is documented. She published it years later." That's exactly right. Now you're ready to begin. This is what 25 centuries of Taoist practice produces. Not the elimination of the not knowing. The capacity to stand in the not knowing without flinching. Jung stood at this edge in 1929 in his Zurich study on the 4th morning after reading the Tao Te Ching. He sat without moving for a long time. Watts spent 58 years falling into it and climbing out of it and falling in again, honestly, publicly, with the houseboat and the wine and the 3 marriages and the full admission that knowing the water does not mean you never fight the current. And Lao Tzu wrote it all down in 100 pages in the 5th century before the Common Era, and then, by most accounts, walked into the mountains and was never seen again. The question he left open, the one both Jung and Watts were circling from opposite directions their entire lives, is not, what is the Tao? They both knew that question has no answer that language can hold. The question he left open is quieter than that, more immediate, more useful. What are you protecting right now? With all your analysis, all your excavation, all your efforting, all your sincere, fraudulent trying, that the Tao is waiting to flow through? Spend one evening this week finding out. The next video goes somewhere neither Jung nor Watts fully explored, to the woman at the center of The Secret of the Golden Flower, the figure the text was actually written for, whose story has been hidden in plain sight for 1,500 years. Stay curious, stay still. This is Daily Tao Wisdom. The rest is yours.